Hey everyone, welcome back to another Wellbeing Wednesday. This is the monthly segment that shows childcare providers and caregivers like yourselves, whether that's, a typical classroom, whether that's caring for your own children or caring for other people's children. We all have places in our lives where we are caregivers. So hopefully this little segment is going to show you how to take care of your own well-being because taking care of yourself is in fact taking care of others. I'm your host, Susanna Creed with Be Well Care Well, a program that is all about supporting the well-being of our child care providers and caregivers. So I'm really excited about today's topic since it is September, besides the fact that it's, pumpkin spice everything and cozy sweaters, even though it's like in the 80s still, I got my sweater on, I'm ready. So as we kick into September, especially with, the start of school, maybe if you're a teacher, you're starting to get into the groove of things, it's a really great time to reconnect with our purpose or kind of our why, basically. And so this is also a really great topic to tap into that intersection between spirituality, purpose, and our overall wellness. So with Be Well Care Well, we use the 8 dimensions of wellness model, and one of those is the spiritual dimension of wellness. And a lot of times that can be kind of this amorphous, what does that mean? And really, it's up to you what that means. And so today we're going to use that as kind of a springboard and a jumping off point for our conversation to see how all of these pieces actually do fit into wellness as a whole. And then also, what does that mean for us personally and our own wellness journeys? And this can be, faith-based. This can also be entirely secular, so I think we're going to have a good conversation that's basically you're going to be able to find yourself no matter what we're talking about. You're going to see yourself here, and everyone is welcome in this conversation, and we'll all walk away with some really great ideas, some great conversation starters, and some things to think about. So today we have, I'm very excited, Miss Detra Clark with us. She is a former faith-based therapist and with over 15 years of experience. She is also a Christian health counselor and coach. So Detra, thank you so much for joining us. I'm really excited to talk to you today.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, let's dive right in. And also, as we're talking, for all of you who are watching, either live or watching the replay, please feel free to put your aha moments, your questions, comments, anything like that in the comment section. I'll be checking those as we go as well. So, Detra, my first question for you. I'm wondering if you can maybe describe a little bit about how purpose and spirituality can tie into our wellness, whether that's your personal journey, working with clients, but I'd love to just kind of hear your take on that.
Yeah, I think that because we're a 3-part being, right? We're a spirit, we're a soul, we're a body, everything works together. And when people know what their purpose is, when they have a goal that they're working towards, I find that they care for all 3 components better. And I have a quote I wanted to share. I just think it's so encompassing. And it talks about how I think when people don't know what their purpose is, they do 2 things. Either they do nothing or they overwork, right? They overwork trying to figure out what it is they're working towards. They know that there's more there, but they don't know exactly what it is. And so they get busy doing a lot of nothing. So this quote says, overworking seems right to our achievement-oriented culture, but it doesn't impress God. Busyness works against longevity, which at the heart of a life of excellence, it will cost us in the long run. And so purpose really is driving through to why am I here? What is the whole reason that I exist? And because we are a very works-focused society, we really value titles and we value accolades and we value like human opinion and praise. Sometimes purpose can feel like it's so much more than what it actually is. And I think that purpose is really in the thing that lights you up, the thing that when you think about or when you're doing it or you're operating in this gift or whatever is inside of you, you feel alive. That's the purpose. And for some people, I have had for me personally, I've had different purposes, right? But it all revolves around the same gift, which is people. I was a therapist for many, many years. Now I'm a homeschool mom and I work in coaching in the nooks and crannies of my day, but all of those involve people and pouring into people, encouraging people and building people up. And so I know at the heart of it, whatever we call it, I know that my purpose is to encourage and to bring people further along than what I found them. And so I think when you're thinking of purpose, first it starts with identifying what gifts you possess, then thinking about what lights you up, and then making it practical. And we don't always get there all at once, and that's okay.
That is such an interesting way to go about purpose. And honestly, I don't know if I've actually heard it put that way. So can you maybe start at the beginning of what you first said of kind of like identifying those gifts? How can we do that? Like if we're like, oh, this sounds great, but I literally don't know what I like, or I don't know what I'm good at, or a lot of times, especially we as women, we're like, oh, I'm not good at anything, or we think like that, right? So how can we maybe start and identify some of those gifts and strengths that we have and the things that light us up?
Yeah, I think I'm going to go back to when I was in college, when I was an undergraduate. And they had all these different programs. There were 1,000 majors in this book that they handed me as an 18-year-old. Here you go. Here's the rest of your life right here. Decide on one thing. I had no clue, but I did know what I didn't like. I knew I don't like math. I don't really like to be outside a whole lot. Like I knew the things that I didn't like. And from that, it helped me to narrow it down to what I do like. And I think that's a really practical way for people to start, because people can usually quickly identify, yeah, I don't like public speaking, or I don't really like being around people, and if you can like cross those things off the list, it really narrows it down to help you hone in on more of what you do like. So I think that's a starting place. We're all good at something, right? But because of, I think, the curse of comparison, right? The things that we
I
are
like
good.
that, the curse of comparison.
It is a curse, right? Because
Right?
if I have friends that are so creative. That is what they're gifted at. I'm not, but their gift blesses me. And I can accept that I don't have a lot of creativity, but I am very organized and I am very structured, right? And so really not comparing what somebody else's purpose or gift looks like, but being comfortable in my own allows me to get okay with making that list, right? Some purposes or gifts or titles feel really fancy. They feel really big. And I think that's one of the deterrents from people being able to go, wow, this feels purposeful to me, is it doesn't look as glamorous as somebody else's. But if we can push away the curse of comparison and really just focus in on what lights us up on the inside, then I think it's a starting place. It's like step one towards the purpose, because I don't know that we ever fully arrive. I think we're always taking steps to get closer to fulfillment of it.
There's so many nuggets in what you just said. One of the things, two phrases are sticking with me right now. One, the curse of comparison, right? Because it feels like a curse. It feels like it follows you and it sucks up everything. But I love the counter phrase that you had for that of their gift blesses me. Like that, I don't know, that's just really kind of shifting some things in my brain of like, oh my gosh, this person, maybe they're leading in a way that I wish I had thought about months ago. And it's like, okay, well, how can their gift bless me? Like what is that gift? Okay, you know what? I have a model now. I can ask that person. I can learn from them. And it's just a little shift. And I mean, everybody who has worked with me knows that I'm a perfectionist. And, that comparison is just so big. And I just had never thought about that, and it's, like you said, very practical way to shift that perspective, because we always hear, oh, be grateful. Write down the things that you're grateful for. Which, right. Don't get me wrong, so many studies, like scientifically, it is proven that it works. But also when we hear it, we kind of, of course, I just write it down, whatever. But this is slightly active without it demanding too much of a way to shift that perspective. What is the blessing to me
Yes.
from that gift? You know, is that inspiring me, or is it giving me an idea, or is it teaching me patience? Is it teaching me, you know, what can it have, which I think is huge. And then something else that you mentioned is, you know, starting sometimes with what you don't like.
Yeah.
Because, and I think a lot of times that can also feel very frustrating, right? Because if we don't see how it's fitting into the greater picture of, oh my gosh, I don't like this job, or I don't like this, I don't like this, I don't like any of this. And we
Mhm.
kind of get bogged down in that. But again, a little shift that we can say is, this is all giving me information and pointing me towards, eventually there is a shift of, oh, I do like this. And I
Yes.
can attest from myself, as I'm sure that you probably can in your life. Yeah, you might hit a lot of I don't like, but at some point you look up and you're like, oh my gosh, I found one thing that I do like. You know,
Yes.
it all actually is an active part. So when we feel frustrated and we're like, why am I not enjoying this? That is all useful information. And that
Yeah.
eventually trusting that there will come a time when that shift happens and we may not be aware of it, but it will happen. So those are
Absolutely.
just some like, I'm just like, I love those so
Yeah.
much. So,
Yeah.
and I'm going to check the chat real quick. Um, yeah, I have to remind myself to not compare all the time. Thank you for the reminder. I like to keep my purpose updated each week.
That's
Their gift blesses me and my gift blesses them. Strengths are blessings and others' strengths fill in your weaknesses, and that's okay. Why I love teamwork. I'm like, if I'm not good at something, I want somebody else who loves doing it
yeah.
to do that. I don't want to be doing it because I'm not
Absolutely.
the right
Absolutely.
person.
No, and there's power in that. And I find that my gift is strengthened when I'm
Mhm,
working with somebody else that's operating in their gift, right? Because I'm not
mhm,
trying to force myself to do things I don't really want to do. Just because I can do it, it doesn't mean that I should. And Lisa
mhm,
Tierkhurst, she has a book called The Best Yes. And she says in her book that if you're constantly saying yes to the good, then that means at some point you're going to have to say no to the best, right? So you're doing all these little bitty things that, yeah, I can do it and it's okay, but it's not lighting you up. You're dreading it. And it's actually a distraction away from what you could be doing, right? A bunch of little nothings that don't add up to a lot when really you could just kind of farm that out.
right.
And then, really get to focus in on the thing that lights you up. And I also like what you said about clues that are leading you to your purpose,
Mhm,
because that's really what it is. I like to think about if you have a child, a toddler, and their diet changes from week to week, right? Like what they liked on Monday, now they don't like it on
mhm,
Friday. And
mhm,
so what are you doing? Your process of elimination. Okay, we know that you don't like this and we know that you don't like that, but I do know that you'll eat this, right? Purpose is
mhm,
kind of the same way. It's kind of like putting things together. I call it holy subtraction, where you're taking away, this is no longer serving me. And purpose also looks different in different seasons, right? There
mhm,
was a time in my life that I had a therapy practice. I saw clients most every day, 9 to 3, until I picked my kids up. And then 15 years later, I had more kids. The season shifted, and that's still a purpose for me. That's still a gift that I have, but it just looks different in this season because of what my life looks like. And so the
mhm,
other thing I think to think about with purpose is that it can shift. It can take a different form, right? The heart of what you're doing doesn't have to look the same in every season, but the thing that lights you up probably stays pretty close to the heart. But the way that you demonstrate that, the way that you live that out
mhm.
can change, and that's okay.
Yeah. And we're seeing some people agree with you in the chat about, you know, kind of there are things that they need to take away, or kind of that idea of that holy subtraction, you know, and kind of that purposeful subtraction of,
Mhm.
you know, I'm removing this thing, or, you know, like even with the team that we have here, you know, there are certain people on my team where I'm like, they are fantastic at this. I can do okay at it, but they are great at it. And letting them do that. And that's fantastic, you know. And it's interesting that you talk about kind of how it shifts something that, like from my personal experience, is I am a naturally very creative, very imaginative person. That has always been a common thread throughout my life, but it has looked very different. When I was younger, I was a dancer for 10 years. I started off college as a dance major. So it was very performance, creative, and natural performing art. Well, then I got into science and anatomy, and it was kind of this creative problem solving of understanding how the body works and the art form of that. Well, then it got into kind of program management, where it's a lot of creative problem solving. Like, how do I have that creativity in inventing systems and processes and analyzing things? But it's all still creative. And now I'm shifting even more. I'm doing these Wellbeing Wednesdays where it's kind of a performative thing, right? But it's also, this natural connection, and it includes videography and uploading and graphic design. And so it's like this interesting way that creativity has always been a thread, but it
Mhm.
can take on so many different forms. So I think that that's a really cool thing. And I love how you're using this idea of purpose, of the things that light you up, because that is a little bit easier sometimes for us to, I think, understand and conceptualize and practice versus what is my purpose? That can
Right.
feel like a really big
Such a
question. And actually,
daunting question, isn't it?
right?
Like,
I
what
know
is
we like to ask hard questions here.
it is. It's heavy. And when it feels heavy like that, it almost steals the joy. Like what's the one thing that I was put on earth to do? And if I don't figure it out and my time passes, I've wasted it. And it's really not that. We can do many, many things, and purpose looks different throughout our life because we are always changing. We're always evolving, right? It's kind of like your beautiful example of how your creativity comes out. And I love working with people like you, by the way, because I am very literal and I'm very organized.
Mhm.
So a creative person can take what I see in my head, they can take that and make it into some type of reality where I can't. And so it works together. Like they can take,
Yeah.
here's what I'm seeing in my head, here's what I want, and turn it into something beautiful. That is a
Mhm.
purpose, right? It's a purpose to take what other people can't do and create a reality for them. And it's beautiful. And so I think we have to keep the fun in it. It's hard to believe that we are put here to have this daunting, miserable, heavy existence that sucks the life out of us, right? And so I think it's the switch and the reframing to know that our purpose not only adds value to the world, but it also helps us to expand who we are. So it's
Yeah.
twofold.
Yeah. That's all awesome. And there was a comment in the chat, and it made me think about a question, and let's see how I can phrase this. But, a lot of times when we worry about things in the day to day, right, it steals that joy. But then there's also responsibilities. Like, we have to do something. So I wonder, especially you're talking about, having it not be this heavy thing, and it doesn't always have to be so serious. How do you balance the things that light you up with those responsibilities and day-to-day things that may not always light you up? So where is that balance? Or do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah,
Another big question with no real answer, but
I do. And I think balance is the key word there. So there are some things, because I'm a mom of four, I'm a wife, I have a business, I homeschool my kids. Like there's all these different hats that I wear. And so there are non-negotiables in my day that I really can't do anything about. They just kind of are what they are. Sometimes it's great, sometimes it's stressful, sometimes I wish I wasn't doing that at all. And that's just
right.
how it is. But the thing that remains the same, and I started this when we had our second child, he's 15 now. And when he was 6 months old, I do a written planner still. It helps me.
Mhm.
I have the electronic, but there's just something about a pen and paper, right? And what I have in my written planner are things that are for me, that are non-negotiables, that appointment is taken. So caring for myself, right? Reading the things that I love to read that help me continue to develop, balanced with the things that aren't so fun, that aren't so light, that are non-negotiables. Because I think when there's no balance of caring for self, really making sure that you're being poured back into, that I have to's feel a lot heavier. And also, I think boundaries. Sometimes the I have to's and the things that feel heavy, again, sometimes we say yes to what is good or what was good in another season that maybe doesn't need to be in the current season that we're in. And so always evaluating what's in front of me right now that I'm doing that I don't have to do this, or I could do it in a different way. When life feels that heavy all the time, there's an imbalance. There's an imbalance. And so it's pulling away what can be pulled away and maybe increasing some soul care time or saying no to something that maybe it seems like you have to, but you don't. We always have an option. And so I think it's the balance and it's the boundary of checking ourselves and our yeses to make sure that they fit in season.
So it's interesting. This reminds me of, and if I'm looking off, it's because I was just, the chat was blowing up in a good way. We always love that. And one of the exercises that we as well-being coaches sometimes will talk through, and we do it in one of our trainings, is this idea of do, delegate, and it's just another method of doing that. Some methods work for others, and sometimes we need 18 million methods, and then one finally sticks. But the way that we like to do it is, you write down all the lists, right? Especially if you're a warrior like me, and I know, like, I've talked to lots of people who have that. Write down all the things. Just write it all down, get it all on paper. Yeah, brain dump all the things. And then you separate it into 3 categories, and you take it just for today of like, what are the things that I can delegate today? What are the things that I can stop today, or maybe forever? Maybe I don't have to do them. But just for today, like, can I stop and not do it? And then what are the things that I truly have to be the one to do it, and I have to do it today?
Yes.
And like kind of breaking it down. And that can actually be a really great exercise, especially for those of us who, go into work, or especially in leadership and different things like that, to start your day. That can be really helpful because it can feel overwhelming, and it's a very grounding practice, and it does help us see where that space comes in.
Absolutely.
So, that just reminded me of that.
Well, and I'll just add to that at the end, when you were breaking down that last category, this is what I have to do today. The simple switch, we've been working on this a lot in my home with my kids, is we get to.
Yes.
We get to. Because, it's kind of a play on words, and you do probably have to, but you also get to. Anything that you're getting to do in your day, it means that you're alive. It means that you're well, you are able to do the things, even if they aren't fun or exciting, you're getting to do them. And that simple switch of words really does something in the neurotransmitters in the brain, really to tap into. It's kind of a left brain, right brain. It really does something. Right? When we get to, I live in Minnesota now. I'm originally from Arkansas, and we have the longest winters here. Like, I literally moved to Alaska, and I love to be active. And so what I've had to tell myself in the last couple of years is I get to run outside in the snow when it's -0. I get to. I don't have to. I get to, because before the have to, it makes it so dreadful to me that I end up talking myself out of it and not doing right. And then it leaves an impression in my brain, because our brains have memory, right? They're like muscle. And so switching that for me has really helped with looking forward to the things that maybe they're not as exciting, but they're beneficial or they're necessary.
Yeah. And again, it's that kind of reframing, right? And it's a perspective shift. A lot of times we think it has to be this, especially with wellness, it's this, oh, I have to work out 3 times a week. And I have to, only eat carrots and almonds for a snack. And that's the only way I can actually take care of my body. Well, is that something you're actually going to do? Is that realistic? And if it's not, why? Why are you doing that? Instead, it can be like, can I try to get in maybe an extra walk this week? Just
Yes.
one time, an extra walk, where it's a shift. It's not
Yes.
even a change, because change is really scary, So it's like
It's just a
shift.
little
It's a
tweak.
little easier to do. It's like, oh well, of course I can just get a walk in once this week. How far do I have to walk? That's cute. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, I can do that. It should almost feel too easy, and kind of that idea of it's the exact same lift. It's just one word. You don't even have to believe that word at first. You're like, I get to. But eventually, again, research shows that it does change over time. And it's like, okay, can I change one word? Yes, I can change one word, and that's that idea of shift. And I think we did have another question in here.
Sure.
Okay, so another question is when it's so daunting to decide on a purpose, how do you move past that to see a purpose for yourself?
Mm. So I think it goes back to, well, one, I think you have to keep it simple.
Mm.
And for some people, I think purpose is kind of it's a big word. It's almost like what diet does to people, right? When you say the word diet, they're like,
Right?
oh my
It's like
gosh,
a trigger word.
water and lemons for the
The
next.
purpose, the
Right.
thing.
Right. What's the one thing? I think it's simplifying it. And instead of going, what is my purpose? Perhaps it's the switch of what do I like, or what am I good at, or what was the last thing that I was doing that brought me joy? I literally was looking forward to it so much. So maybe taking the word purpose out of it and honing in more on what is it that creates excitement in you, or that you look forward to doing. What do you look forward to doing? And to start there and then make a list, because purpose isn't all encompassing either. I don't know that it can be narrowed down always to just one simple thing or one specific task. I think it can take many, many forms, and giving yourself the freedom to know that, I think, can lighten it just in doing that. So like if you love to teach, for example, I'm a really good teacher. I'm not, but for people that are like a really good teacher,
Yeah.
how many different forms can that take? How many different levels can you teach at? How many different topics can you teach on? Does it have to be in a classroom? Can it be virtual, right? Can it be out in nature? Can you write a book? Like, it can take so many different forms. And so I think if you can scale it back to what are the top 5 things that bring you joy? And then what are the ways that you can implement doing more of that? It takes away this heavy umbrella of purpose that really almost, I think, can box us in. It can almost create a paralysis. And so we don't move towards it because it feels so big.
Which is kind of going back to what you even shared at the beginning of, like, when people don't have a purpose, they either over busy themselves, or, they have that analysis paralysis. And so, even here, if you're okay with that, I'm going to use what we talked about earlier and do a little quick shift of perspective. So here I am, thinking, okay, we're talking about purpose and what's your why? And we're like, this will be a great topic for our month here at, in Arkansas with Be Well, Care Well. And, we're talking about purpose here. Of course, the curse of comparison comes in, and it's like, oh, I should have thought about that. Now it's such a heavy topic. And it's like, okay, wait a minute. This can be different perspectives, because that might resonate with some people, and your gift of a different perspective can bless me and bless all of those people who are watching this and that our coaches will share this with, to provide another perspective, and maybe help break down some of those, initial conceptions of what purpose has to be or what it has to look like. And it's not necessarily one is better than the other. I'm kind of giving myself even that grace. And so it's that shift of, okay, it's all right to have multiple different ways of approaching the same topic. And so I'm a big example person, and I like to use those things. So I was like, okay, here's an opportunity. Let me see if I can kind of wrap that around as well. Oh, wow. You've really gotten a lot of us talking on the chat. It'll be so great. I think you're typed in this feature, so you should check it out afterwards. It's really fun. So I cannot believe it. We're already at 1:00. So also, I did have a request. Can you read the quote that you started the day with as well?
Yes, I can. This is a quote by Bill Johnson. He's a pastor in California, and the quote says, it's really about rest. It says, rest, avoiding rest is a violation of our design. Overworking sounds right to our achievement oriented culture, but it doesn't impress God. Busyness works against longevity, which is at the heart of a life of excellence. It will cost us in the long run.
And if anybody needs to hear it again, you can always replay it as well. Um, so just for the sake of time, I want to thank you again so much, Detra, for making this time and talking with us and sharing just your beautiful self with us and your perspectives. I know I got a lot out of it, and it kind of reinforced some things for me, and seems like everybody else got something out of it too. So I want to thank you for talking about this.
Thank
Sometimes daunting and kind of breaking down, what purpose has to be in all of that. So I'm glad that we were able to do that. And then also for those of you who are watching, please make sure to follow Curricular Concepts on Facebook and Instagram. And we also have a YouTube channel, so you don't miss a thing, because we do these Wellbeing Wednesdays, the first Wednesdays every month, typically from 12:30 to 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. So by liking and following and subscribing and all that, you get notifications when those come up. If you like today's video, please feel free to share it with your friends, coworkers, family, give it a like. And if you want to learn more about Be Well, Care Well itself and maybe apply for it here in Arkansas, all of the links and information should be down below, along with Detra's contact information and her website if you want to learn more about the work that she does. So this has been another Wellbeing Wednesday, and I am wishing you well for the rest of the month. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.